everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is just Francis today, and this week it is all me talking to you, reviewing a couple of things. So I don't know how I came across this book, and we're gonna cover the book first. If you haven't seen me posting pictures of this insane book that I picked up, that I actually like, I didn't pay for it. I didn't buy it. I didn't put my money down on it. But in a way, I did because I had my library order a copy of it. So like my tax dollars went to getting this book, which is funny because like the author, I have seen other books from this author in my library, because this author, William Johnstone, who has been dead for a decade, I believe. Uh, but he wrote westerns and stuff. So it's a big William W. Johnstone and then tiny with J. A. Johnstone, and J. A. Johnstone is the one who actually writes this, which I believe is his niece. And it's very pointedly, they don't mention her gender when talking about anything. But I don't know. I don't know if this is one of those things where like it's like James Patterson like cranks out like 14 books a year, but like there's no way that he's writing all of them. They're probably like a committee that writes some of them or whatever. So I kind of wonder if that's what's going on with this, or if J.A. Johnstone like actually wrote this. A part of me, like, I've never read anything else by William Johnstone, so I couldn't tell you. So this is the book, Trigger Warning, and it's a big red star on a white background, like a white brick facade, and it says there are no safe spaces. Uh, so and as soon as you open it up, there's also it seems like this is a whole series, and I don't know if it's I don't think that it's the same like characters here. I couldn't tell you, but it seems like the Johnstone family name has kind of stepped away from westerns and is now it's called Stand Your Ground. So it's like the Stand Your Ground series. And there's the Doomsday Bunker, Tyranny, the book Stand Your Ground, Black Friday, Home Invasion, The Bleeding Edge, and The Blood of Patriots. And it seems like some of them, like they're tiny, so I can only kind of guess at some of it. Home Invasion's great because it's a stop sign with a shredded like American flag draped over it. So I don't know. I don't know what this pivot is. I don't know where this pivot came from. I don't know who wrote this because this I know J.A. Johnstone is a woman, but this book does not feel like it was written by a woman. Like, and if you go, we're gonna post the link to the thread, the Facebook or the Twitter thread that I made, posting pictures. Like, God, it must have taken like 30 pictures of this book, of various passages in this book, and it doesn't feel like I said, it doesn't feel like it's written by a woman, unless it's a woman that is like that is really self-hating, I guess. And we'll get into that. So if you didn't hear me read the back of it, when I first picked this up, we'll just read the first paragraph. Former Army Ranger Jake Rivers is not your typical Kelton college student. He's not spoiled, coddled, or ultra-lib like his classmates who sneer at the soldier boy. So as it goes through, it's like he's not triggered, it's quote triggered by quote microaggressions, not outraged by quote male privilege and quote cisgender bathrooms. He does not need a quote safe space. A lot of fucking heavy quotes on this. So there's you can kind of tell what this is going to be. This is going to be racist Facebook uncle the novel. This is if you like ground up like the Reagan Battalion, the people who respond to the Reagan Battalion on Facebook or on Twitter, and like fed it into an AI, this book would be shit out. There is like, so the basic story is that he's going to college. He doesn't fit into college because he's a right winger, and he is being punished and persecuted for being a right winger and being a troop. And then terrorists take over, and he's the only thing that can save everybody, right? So and of course it is exactly the wet dream of every conservative, neoconservative, fucking insane human being out there who like gravitates to owning guns and thinks that owning a gun is the greatest thing that anybody could ever do to protect everything. There will be a portion where we discuss how there's a fucking page and a half of him like considering going back to his room to get his gun. So just some a little bit of background on that. This book is insane and it's not well written, like I said. Even the back of the back cover has it has typos on it. Jake's needs an education. I believe siege is misspelled on the back here. Let's see. There was something else. There's like a couple of misspellings, and then down in the bottom left it says "live free and read hard," which I don't know what they're going for here. But yeah, this is the best-selling author of Doomsday Bunker, Black Friday, Stand Your Ground, the explosive story of college under siege, and freedom under fire. So there's a lot of internal dialogue with our hero Jake Rivers. Jake is an asshole. I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you that right now. And Jake represents an idea of a conservative that doesn't exist. Like the entirety of this is Jake is constantly like at battle with Antifa and the libs and everybody else on this campus who he doesn't fit in and he doesn't he's the one who's open-minded and he doesn't mind working with other people, but it's the libs, it's the ones who call him fascist and the ones who call him a Nazi. They're the ones who really are the bad guys. And also pick up, I think page 35 is well, Nazis were socialists too. It's like fuck. Jake didn't study real history, it seems. But Jake, like I said, represents like if Jake existed as a conservative in the real world, I wouldn't mind Jake. Jake reminds me of Ron Swanson as a libertarian, right? Like all the you come across libertarians who are just like, yeah, Ron Swanson. You're like, yeah, sure. If every libertarian was like Ron Swanson, I wouldn't mind libertarians because Ron Swanson is knowledgeable. He's fair. He's balanced. He knows how to do things. He wants, he doesn't abide by laziness. But he's always willing to teach and, to encourage others and to, do. Ron Swanson, if he was a libertarian in the real world, is great. But real libertarians are people who have like age of consent laws from, Arkansas to Wyoming memorized in their head. Like, real libertarians in the real world are like insane white people that have that think that market driven forces are, what's going to save everything. And also, why do we need the FDA? Well, like fucking 5 people died of like romaine lettuce and E. coli. Like, yeah, why do we need the fucking FDA? Yeah, sure, market forces, because they're going to fucking kill everybody with their shitty ass food. So, Jake exists as a conservative that I wish existed, because Jake shuts the fuck up about his political beliefs, and Jake seems like a fair human being, like in that way of, when it comes to racism or sexism, it seems like he is. He is not, but it somewhat kind of seems like he is. So, and we'll get into that. So, let's talk about fucking page 1. First chapter. Jake is studying and he hates reading this book, and he hears a commotion and he hears a guy yelling at a girl, and he's just like, oh, I'm gonna go check out what's going on because I'm bored and I got nothing better to do. He goes out. As he's walking down the stairs, a group of students was sitting in the lobby talking about something. He heard the words microaggression and privilege and cisnormative, but Jake didn't even glance at them as he went by, and none of them called out to him. He didn't have any friends here, and whatever the subject under discussion, none of them wanted his opinion on it. He was just a big dumb brute after all. I don't like. This is like people saying I saw somebody buy steaks and lobsters with food stamps at the grocery store. Like, that's a lie. If it's not a lie, you need to back the fuck up away from people to see that somebody's using an EBT card. This guy did not walk by and then just like randomly hear these things. Like, everything that happens on this college campus is absolutely made up. Now, I will say it has been a while since I've been on a college campus. And yes, this is supposedly a liberal arts college campus that Jake is on. But there's nothing about like this college campus that tells me that this exists. This exists in the fever dreams of like Lindsey Graham or people who follow. This is what QAnon thinks that, is happening uh, on any campus, which like I'm sorry to tell you that like I understand, like I said, been a while since I've been on a college campus, but even back then it wasn't this bastion of liberal anything. I'm sure there are liberal groups, and I'm sure that there are there's the young DSA people out there, but it is not just like you're just walking around and just randomly get attacked by Antifa, which happens to Jake a lot. Just Antifa just like pops out of nowhere and beats him up constantly. Now he always like gets in his licks, like the exciting fight scenes that happen. There's three times he's attacked by Antifa, but we learn like later on that like two of them when he's assaulted by like people who seem to know what they're doing. It turns out to be the terrorists in disguise, feeling things out before they attack. But yeah, there's a lot of being attacked by Antifa. So he goes outside. He sees a guy and a girl bickering back and forth, and he's like, "All right, relationship bullshit. Nothing, none of my business." And then the guy smacks the girl, and he's like, "Well, I can't. I may be old fashioned. I can't abide by a woman getting hit." So he, it's like, "All right, man, what the fuck? You can't do that." And of course and of course, like while he's doing this, he's like, "Oh, I better not say anything because otherwise I'll get accused of being misogynist by the girl. Oh, the women are always the ones that do this shit." And so, of course, that's exactly what happens. She's just like, "You're being misogynist and patriotic society and blah 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 blah." Like you can hear like the blue hair suddenly growing and like the 5 earrings and the 12 nose rings and whatever else it is that like these people envision when something like this happens, just fucking happening. So of course, like all this happens, and Jake's just like, "Well, you can't, hit a woman," and blah blah blah, and then he gets attacked by Antifa and everything. So you may be wondering, why is Jake at this liberal arts school? Right? Of course you're wondering that because it makes no fucking sense that he's here. Yeah. Well, it turns out Jake is the grandson of somebody who is like super rich, like a billionaire rich, and paid for a bunch of stuff at Kelton College. And so Jake gets back from the army, and he gets out of the army. He's like, "I don't know what I want to do with my life. I've already got a bachelor's degree." And his grandpa, who's the billionaire, they're out, fucking shooting clay pigeons. And he's just like, "Why don't you go to college? Just go give it a try. I'll get you in here. I've given them a lot of money, so you're in. Don't worry about anything. I got you." And there's a lot. So Jake comes from a whole rich background. And I'm not going to get into all of his background because a lot of it is boring and completely unnecessary. So that's why he's in school. And so he's just like, "Well, what do I want to take?" And he's like, "Well, I'll go ahead and get my degree in microbiology. I'll get my master's and my PhD or whatever." So that's why Jake's at college. He's there's a lot of like he's really smart, but he's also really tough. Like you could have been the valedictorian had you just stayed in school and not dropped out to go join the army. And he's like, "Oh, I would have been the salutarian or whatever. The math girl would have beaten me out or something." Like we have to make sure that everybody knows that Jake is very smart and very tough at the same time. He's a real fucking Mary Sue. Jake is not like weak at anything. But the next thing that we're going to talk about, so he's going over the course schedule. Like this, like a flashback. Gender culture and U.S. national identity is one of the courses. He's like, had him frowning and figuratively scratching his head. So, gender culture and U.S. national identity. I feel like that's a good course. Okay, feminist critique of Christianity. Again, yes, that is Christianity has been around, but you're going to get an idea as it goes through because each one of these things is attacking a thing that a conservative loves. Right? Christianity, national identity, social justice and American racism, social justice warriors, the psychological impact of male microaggression. Maybe something that Jake could take because Jake is a real fucking microaggressive piece of shit in this. Countering warmongering and oppression in American culture. Ooh. Now we're affecting our warrior culture. Understanding multiphasic gender constructs. Honestly, might be some good stuff to learn. Jake had never seen a load of such useless baloney in all of his life. Where were the regular courses? He flipped to the English section. heteropatriarchy in American literature. I will say that I tried I myself try to make a thing to find um, non-white male authors a lot of times to read. Not that I completely cut them out, but I do seek out people who are not like myself to read their things. Nothing wrong with that. And then LGBTQIAPK Tales, a seminar. So I don't know if any of these exist, but if they do, I would take some of them. Honestly, countering warmongering and oppression in American culture, that's literally this podcast. So congratulations. You all owe me Patreon money for this course. So go ahead and kick back into that. Pay us for our with our emotional labor here. Understanding multiphasic gender constructs. That's actually something that I would like. I mean, I'm a straight white cisgendered male. I would like to know more about that, and I'm sure that it's something that's ever evolving and changing. But also, again, I'm sure that like the author has in their mind this idea of like it's just a shrill person standing up there saying nobody can use gendered pronouns here, and everybody's going to be called Zer. Which honestly, okay, sure, fucking yeah, let's do that. Let's have a course where we strip away gender. That sounds awesome. That sounds different and weird and like completely counter to anything else that I've ever done. So fucking sure, and maybe it'll be great, and maybe it'll suck, but whatever. Like you can already see that there's like this like we're the regular courses like history or whatever. We're gonna learn that like. I'm sure that that it's states' rights that started the Civil War and not slavery. So there's a lot there's a lot going in. So this is the kind of college, and like his super rich grandfather didn't graduate college, so I don't understand why he's giving money to Kelton, and I don't understand like his super rich grandfather is also not like liberal. He's like they're outside shooting clay pigeons. They're he doesn't seem like super ultra conservative, but he also doesn't seem like a person who's like really, really liberal and, that Jake doesn't get along with. He gets along with his grandfather. So I don't know. I don't know why his grandpa was just like, if he's just so fucking far removed from this school that he just keeps pumping money into for no apparent reason. It's like, usually if you're giving money to a school, it's because you're an alma mater or because you believe in something there, or because not just like his uncle or his grandfather is just like, I don't know, there's a school over there. Just give them billions of dollars for whatever reason. Oh, it turns out that they're into doing gender construct classes. Well, I don't know about that. So let's move on. So we're going to meet his microbiology teacher and his guidance counselor, Dr. Mutombo. Now, Dr. Mutombo, his real name, do I have it here? Montalblant, I think. It's French. He's French. But Dr. Mutombo identifies as African. He's white, and he says that he identifies as African American. I identify as African American. My ancestors were colonials named Montalblant, who lived for a time in the French Equatorial Africa before immigrating to this country. I simply adopted a more appropriate spelling to honor the unfortunate people who they oppressed and exploited. Okay, so that seems a little strange to me. But also, it's kind of okay, understand. Like you definitely should be, like this is obviously a caricature that goes beyond, what anything should be. This is insane what they're doing, obviously. But being understanding, like, oh, I come from, his parents were French colonial in French colonial Africa. That wasn't that long ago, man. Like Africa was like had French names all over it in the 40s and 50s and 60s. Look at a globe from the 50s, man. You'll find that Africa, especially Western Africa, was quote owned by the French, at least when it came to maps. So like being like, oh, I'm kind of open to understanding that, and you're like, wow, I do come from colonial stock, and internalizing that and turning it into something where like maybe you try to do something better about it or turn it around. But what he does, of course, is he calls himself Mutombo, and again, along with every insane thing that the conservative brain is thinking going on. All these people, like, I identify as an African American when he's obviously a white man. Um, and then throughout the rest of the book, it always refers to him as his full name and never Dr. Mutombo, which is like one of those. It's just like a small dig where I feel like it's a small dig towards not telling a transgender person, calling a transgender person by the pronouns that they prefer, in which we're not going to call he's like this is the name I prefer to go by is Dr. Mutombo, and like I would if I ran into that I'd be like that's insane, but whatever, you're Dr. Mutombo, I'll call you Dr. Mutombo if that's what you want to be called. But the book, like even the narrator and Jake internally in his mind always call him by Mutombolot Bolt. I don't speak any kind of French, so I know I'm mispronouncing that. So just an interesting thing, and throughout the whole thing, Dr. Mutombo is just like, you don't belong here. You should get out of here, Jake. This is not the place for you. You're a soldier, a warmonger, or whatever. All right. So let's move on to some of the fighting that he does. The Antifa fighting, because the writing, of course, Antifa is they're weak and they're sweaty and it takes 10 of them to beat up on Jake, and they have to bring like chains and bats and whatnot. But one of the things that kills me is that at any time that Jake is fighting these guys and he's got one on the ground and he's like, okay, let's just look at this. So, all it would take to crush your windpipe is a little more pressure. Then I could walk away and you'd lay there and suffocate. It wouldn't be a damn thing you could do to stop that. Instead of doing that, Jake eased up a little. The man gasped in some air. He used that air to rasp, fascist. Of course, in the middle of getting his ass kicked, they're constantly calling him a fascist, like, or whatever. And then Jake goes into this, are you really that stupid? You think a real fascist, a real Nazi would let you live right now? I've been listening to you idiots for years now, yammering about how any politician you don't like is literally Hitler, when all along it's been your side that's been acting like the brown shirts and going after anyone who doesn't agree with you. Free speech, but only if it's speech you approve of, speech that fits your precious narrative. Anything else gets shut down with violence if need be. Hell, you like the violence. Makes you feel like big and powerful. Punching Nazis feels great. Only you're the Nazis. It took a while for us to get to this this speech from Jake. I think this is like the third time he's getting assaulted by quote Antifa. So of course you have to have the big "I'm not a Nazi, you're a Nazi." I'm the one who is okay with free speech and you're not. Which and look, I'm not going to tell you that like the left is fucking angelic. I will tell you that all day long the left's got a lot of problems that it's got to work out. But the left is also not the fucking Nazi ass conservatives. Which like Jake's not a Nazi. Jake is a reserve. Excuse me. Jake is a former Army Ranger who is just trying to go to school and trying to find a place to fit in. And he's getting harassed because he's a former troop and because he's a conservative. And like, look, as a normal human being, don't fuck with that guy. And in the real world, nobody would fuck with that guy because Jake doesn't, make his status known as a conservative. He doesn't run around telling everybody I'm a soldier. Like Jake actually, though I will say Jake absolutely sounds like that guy that like wears his Ranger pack and everything to fucking to school. Like doesn't have a normal backpack. He wears like the multicam backpack and butt pack and everything, and keeps a high and tight and wears like boots still and shit. Wears a web belt in his jeans, that. So I can see why people are like, oh, he's a soldier because he looks like a complete fucking boot ass motherfucker. So there could be. I mean, it could be that's how everybody knows. But Jake doesn't make it super known, but everybody knows for some reason. Somehow everybody knows and everybody is targeting him. And like in a real college, like that just doesn't in the real world, in a real like place in the real world. Like I could see people yelling at Richard Spencer like in the real world. I could see people yelling at like Ted Cruz in the real world. Fuck yeah, yell at those people. They're pieces of shit. This is a dude just going to college. Like no matter how liberal arts college this place is, There's a lot of money flowing through here, so there's a lot of conservatism, one way or the other. All right, so at one point, let's see. The paragraph of hitting all of our talking points. I believe this was an argument with Dr. Matumbo. You were heard to cast doubt on the validity of Keynesian economics. I'm taking an econ class. We're supposed to discuss things like that. You told another student that, in your opinion, all lives matter. Are you saying they don't? Oh, Peeler, this is, I think one of the fucking campus cops. Ignored that question and went on. You claim to be proud of your military service. Why wouldn't I be? This modern army isn't always what I wished it was. But what's wrong with serving your country and being proud of what you did? In history class, you expressed admiration for Ronald Reagan. I said he was a lot better president than a lot of the bozos who came after him. Do students give up the right to have an opinion when they go to school here? So I want to, gloss over the obvious all lives matter and Ronald Reagan and everything. This is a military podcast, so what we're going to talk about is this modern army isn't always what I wish it was. I'm really later on he expresses a lot of love for Audie Murphy. You can tell that he wishes that he was killing Nazis or in Vietnam, and that whatever we're doing now just isn't where he wants to be. This is not the war that he wanted to fight, or whatever. Or if there's just I'm sure that if I sat down with Jake and fucking cracked a few beers with him, we would eventually get to discussing how do women really belong in combat? Should transgender people be serving? Should this wasn't it better when we could haze the shit out of people and call Asian people horrible names and whatnot? Wasn't things better back then? Weren't things better back when I could do whatever the fuck I wanted and everybody had to just shut up and do what I wanted? That is what that line says to me, and that line really stood out to me. All right. So there's a couple of other people that we're going to talk about here. There's Natalie, who is criminal justice person, the criminal justice teacher, who Jake meets, and she's a little older, but she's hot, and Jake's into it, and she is not as floofy with the PC culture, and she's kind of thinks that it's a joke too. Then you've got Pierce, who is the token black guy who does Pierce is great. So it's at one point Jake is attacked and Pierce uploads unedited footage so that Jake was attacked first, and he's like, thanks, but I have to ask, why are you doing this? I mean, why is a black guy helping someone accused of being a white supremacist? Pierce shrugged. For one thing, I was there and I saw what happened the other night. There was nothing racial about it. These guys mobbed you and you had to fight back. Same thing here. You were trying to get away from the loudmouth without any trouble, and he wouldn't let you. I believe in fairness and sticking up for the underdog, whether I agree with his politics or not. Doesn't mean I have any use for Nazis or the KKK. Believe me, neither do I, Jake says. A person can be conservative without supporting either of those groups of loons. True, but those groups of loons are on your side, y'all. So, I mean, I get it. And sure, for leftist, politics, we have to deal with the crazy tankies and and I say that with love, because there are normal tankies and then there's the crazy ones. But also if you say Nazi or KKK, everybody knows what that means. You say tanky outside of Twitter and nobody knows the fuck you're talking about. You have to explain it. And then even then they're still that's not a thing. That doesn't sound like it's a thing. And really it's not. Not to the, not as big as, neo-Nazi or KKK groups are today. So, but Pierce has a study group, and one of the leader of the study group is an Islamic extremist. He's a fucking communist Islamic extremist who loves Sharia law and wants to bring down the decadent West. And of course, there's always back and forth between you're rich and you come from money and this, that, and the other thing. But I love that the one Muslim guy that they have in it, they have to immediately turn him into a wannabe terrorist one day. He's going to be the next Osama bin Laden or something. And of course, the Muslim terrorist tries to join the other terrorists too, because the real terrorists are Marxist terrorists, and he Fareed, I believe his name is, tries to go and join up with them. So, but not so much. That doesn't work. But the love interest between Jake and Natalie is very curious, and we're gonna be getting into some spoilers. I'm sorry, I should have put spoiler alerts at the first beginning of this, but I do not suggest anybody ever fucking read this book. Um, Natalie turns out to have been working with the bad guys. I don't really know to neutralize Jake because at any point in time they could have just killed him, but they didn't, and of course they end up regretting that in the end. But Natalie, like the whole relationship between him and Natalie is dumb and useless. Like there's nothing worthwhile about it. But I will say that there's a very interesting passage that comes in. So Natalie invites Jake out to dinner, and they're like, "We're gonna go to this steakhouse." So they get into Jake's pickup truck. So here's the passage. They took his pickup, with Natalie giving him directions to the steakhouse. Not that he really needed them. He knew he could have relied on his innate sense of direction to find the place, but he had never been one of those guys who resented when he had to rely on somebody else's directions. Some men get bent out of shape by that, especially when it was a woman telling him where to go, so to speak. Jake, however, seldom got lost, so he had never really been an issue. Actually, he wasn't sure he had ever been lost, at least in the sense of having no idea where he was and not a glimmering of how to get where he wanted to go. That natural ability had come in handy many times during his military service. The unit to which he was assigned had learned quickly to rely on him as a scout. Okay, first off, that's not what a fucking scout does. You don't fucking just send a single scout out and like, hey, go see if you can find a steakhouse out here in Iraq. Go see what you can say. That's not what scouting is. It's not about getting lost. Like, you're never like beyond contact with your fucking unit. Secondly, the like lengths that they have to go to make sure that you know that Jake is a gentleman. Jake is a man who is perfectly happy and to let a woman tell him where to go, but he doesn't need her to do that. And like this entire thing is just insane. Like imagine yourself in a city where you don't really know anything. Like he's not from the Kelton College area. And it does say he's like, "Oh, I think I know. I think I passed by that place." And she's like, "Oh, I'll give you directions." Like this entire paragraph could have been they got into the pickup, Natalie giving him directions to the steakhouse. Not that he really needed them because he had a fucking iPhone and Siri, and if they were meeting there, he would have gotten there perfectly fine. Because it's 2019, and you don't need to just rely on the fucking iron in your boogers to make you fucking get from point A to point B. Like, these paragraphs really stood out to me as absolutely insane. There's another part in it as well where they're sitting and they get potato skins as an appetizer. And for some reason, I don't know why, and maybe somebody can reply and give me an idea of why, but for some reason, they have to describe that she ate 2 and he ate 3. Like, you could have just been like, they got an appetizer and move on from there. But they got potato skins, and she had 2. They split potato skins. She ate 2, and he ate 3. And I don't know if this is like just say split it, then maybe they got 6. But for some reason, we have to say that she ate less. Probably because she's, being womanly and thin, I suppose, on eating fucking TGI Friday or Longhorn Steakhouse potato skins. So I the misogyny of Jake really comes out, like I just imagine Jake sitting there just being like, this is fine. I don't actually need you to do this though. I can do whatever the fuck I want. I can get to wherever I want. I can get to 7 steakhouses right now. You mean get to a steakhouse and a gelato shop? I can do this whole date without you, bitch. I don't need you, but I'm okay with you being here. So let's see. Oh, the paragraph that doesn't end well, or that doesn't the paragraph that doesn't age well. You mean they fear what the lunatic in the White House might do? And Jake says, "A little fear can be a healthy thing," Jake said with a smile. "As time goes on and things keep on getting better, the only ones who think the guy is a lunatic are people like you who live in your little echo chambers and never hear what normal people think. You wouldn't believe it if you did." I wonder if how Jake is dealing with the government shutdown right now over a fucking border wall. Look, I get it, and I get, they at one point in time they're like, "Who did you vote for?" And he's like, "It's a secret ballot." He fucking voted for Trump, and he's that guy. Jake's the kind of guy who votes for Trump because he's like, I don't know, Trump's a wild card. I don't know what he'll do, but I can't trust Hillary Clinton, which like is insane to think. Like to think that Trump is a wild card. Like if you remember 2016 and the primaries, and like how insane of a human being he was in general, and be like, well, he's a wild card. Let's see what he's gonna do. I don't know. It's gonna be crazy. We'll see. We'll see where this madman takes us. And like, of course, immediately off of a cliff. All right. So yeah, guns start going off at some point. There's a whole page and a half about him talking about gun-free zones and how the whole concept is the stupidest thing Jake had ever heard of. Glaring neon sign of an invitation for evil to march in and have its way unchecked. Fucking, that's not how things work. Just if people weren't able to get fucking guns, it wouldn't happen either. I don't. Look, we've talked in length about the crazy things that conservatives think that are going to happen when they bring their fucking snub nosed 38 to the baseball game. Like they're sitting around like, I'm ever vigilant. I'm the sheepdog and you're all the sheep and I'm here for it. Like as if another dude shooting into a crowd is going to be a great idea. All right. Let's see. So terrorists start coming in. There's a lot of, you goddamn kids. You're all rich. You don't deserve the money. And then the campus police department, who Jake kind of runs in with a bit. There's McRaney, who is like the chief in charge, and he's like kind of cool with Jake. Like he's like, Jake, you need to chill out with your things, but I'm kind of with you, this PC culture, but this is where you're at now. So there's a whole like, I don't know what it is about these books that forces in the whole like, well, this is my campus and I'm responsible and I'm the one in charge. And then the FBI comes in and he's just like, you can't take charge of this investigation. There's no point to it. There's no reason for it. But they just have it in there. There's no reason for any of this stuff. McRaney like fights off one of the terrorists and like kills him. But he's like he's bleeding really hard. It reminds me of Teasdale in Rambo. Like, I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna hunt this guy down. There's no fucking reason for any of it. The FBI and the CIA and Homeland Security and everybody comes in, and there's fucking no reason for it. There is eventually a guy named Dog who nobody knows, and they're just like, oh, he's a spook, and Dog runs around and just fucking kills like terrorists like barehanded. Like he's just like, I'm here and I'm just gonna fucking go in and do whatever I want. As if like in any situation, like all these like FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, and local law enforcement. Everybody who's like, nobody knows who the fuck you are. No, you're not going in there. Are you insane? Well, I have a badge that you've never seen. Well, I'm going in. Of course, Dog goes in and kills a bunch of people. Jake kills a bunch of people. You know how it goes. You knew how this was going to end. Jake gets to be the hero. Dr. Matumbo kills a guy, by dropping a bookcase on him and then taking the guy's gun and shooting him. So Dr. Matumbo seems to be kind of useful. In the end, Dr. Matumbo is like decides to go off to his ancestral lands of France to learn about his history. Which hey, thumbs up, man. Go for it. You should find out about your family. So he kind of turned, but at no point in time, because Pierce kind of is useful as well, in this, but they still like, oh, Jake has this like, well, I wouldn't want a white African American professor and a black liberal, but it's you do what you can with the tools that you've been given. So goes through, like I said, Natalie betrays him. She's been working with the terrorists this whole time, but she jumps in front of a bullet. And he keeps like thinking back to her about like, oh, she was the thing that the real betrayal. There's so a couple of other things. The terrorists say that they've got bombs planted all over the place. So the beginning of chapter 28, Jake wasn't surprised to hear the bomb threat come out of the man's mouth. He knew enough about the radical left movement to know that they had always been bombers, going all the way back to the 50s and 60s. It was just part of their methodology. Champion free speech by shutting up everybody who doesn't agree with you. Advocate for equal rights by taking away other people's rights from them. Protest violence by blowing up a bunch of people and stuff. Cowards at heart. Every damn one of them. I cannot remember the last time, like, modern day Western leftists blew anything up. Maybe FARC rebels down in Colombia. I mean, maybe, communist rebels in various other parts of the country. The last thing I remember being blown up is mostly conservatives blowing stuff up, like abortion clinics, or sending pipe bombs and stuff around. Y'all remember that? You remember when pipe bombs were sent to like a bunch of like high-ranking Democrats and shit? That was fun. That was a thing that happened. I think the last lefty thing that happened was a guy shooting at a congressional baseball game. So that bad, yes, but also let's there's a balance that's not being struck here. But apparently, leftists blow things up just constantly. I know we throw rocks and shit, and maybe a Molotov every once in a while, but we ain't the bomb planting kind of people. Unless he thinks like all the IEDs in Iraq are planted by like Iraqi communists, which I'm fairly sure is not happening. At least I don't think like they're communist in a Marxist ideological way. But I'm not. This isn't the podcast for getting into the political identifications of al-Baghdadi or whoever who's planting bombs. Let's see. There's my favorite, the libs being libs. Granderson is another cop, and Granderson's my favorite because he's like an asshole cop, but he also thinks that he's like a radical leftist, even though Jake is just like, dude, they hate you. You're a cop too. And he's like, well, I'm still on the right side of history, and I'm a cop, but I'm a leftist, and Jake, you're the real Nazi. Calling Jake Nazi and fascist and everything. So from Granderson, I'm from the government. Granderson burst out in obvious frustration. See, I'm wearing a uniform and everything. The administration needs to issue a statement and address this, said a middle-aged man who Jake pegged as a professor. The campus is supposed to be a safe space and a gun-free zone. He looked pointedly at the pistols Jake and Granderson held. Neither of you should have those. You should turn those into the authorities immediately. Granderson looked over at Jake and said, are they insane? Jake just shrugged. That's the college experience for you these days, he said. Ha 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 ha. Fucking libs to the end, man. They're just going to be the anti-gun libs and, not understanding any kind of protection and only, trusting, the cops, even though they hate the cops. That's a big thing here. Next time your campus is being blown up by terrorists, call a crackhead and see who shows up first, I guess. So Jake goes through, defeats them, and he meets, at the end, he's just like, I'm not coming back to school. And it turns out Dog, the guy at the who I mentioned earlier, turns out to be like Jake's uncle, and he's just like, I'm a guy that the government calls, and is just like, we need one guy to go and do this thing to like fuck up some things, and he's like, that's what I do because I'm really good at it. So Jake, you can come do that with me since college isn't going to work for you. How would you like to be a guy that just randomly shows up that nobody knows who you are and then just does whatever the fuck you want and has absolutely no oversight? Yay, high fives into the sunset. So that's trigger warning. Don't read it. It's horrible. Not only because it's like horribly offensive, and when I say offensive, I mean, yes, the sexism and the obvious racism and the obvious, baiting of the left, but also it's just badly written. I mean, there's so many like paragraphs that are like 5 or 6 sentences, or there are so many sentences that are 5 or 6 words constantly over and over. There's typos in it. There's no editing to this whatsoever. Half of the stuff doesn't even need to be in there. And we have like a whole thing about Jake's backstory, which is great, but we don't get any like, we're supposed to believe Natalie's the love interest until the swerve at the end. If you didn't fucking see that swerve coming, I don't know what you were doing though. But what about Natalie's backstory? Oh, she doesn't talk about herself. Of course she doesn't. Why would she? Why would she talk about herself? But then again, maybe that was foreshadowing to the obvious betrayal in the end and whatnot. So I don't know. I don't know what really to make of a person that writes this book and a person that picks this book up, flips through it and says, this is my shit. Like, this is literally the worst book I have ever read. Just like when it comes to story, when it comes to prose, when it comes to the subject matter, like this is distilled Facebook racist uncle, just in a book that you can read on a flight from fucking New York to LA, and still have like 3 hours left. This is not a hard book to get through. It's trying to be Die Hard, but it's not. It's trying to be so many things. It's trying to do so much, and it fails on so many levels. And then the final fucking nail in the coffin, after everything's done. Counselors provided by the college were overworked as they tried to help the students deal with the trauma they had gone through. This had been a macro aggression, and some of those already easily triggered snowflakes would never get over it. They were fucking held hostage by terrorists and like saw their friends die and were threatened to have their shit blown up. Yeah, maybe they aren't, Jake. You know, that's the trouble with being a snowflake. You melted if things got the least bit warm. Fuck Jake. Like, I was kind of with Jake a little bit, like, as a fantasy, conservative. I was like, all right, fine, whatever. This is what conservatives like to believe that they are. If they were, maybe Jake wouldn't be, if they were like Jake and they shut the fuck up and didn't make their identity their fucked up politics, then fine. But in the end, Jake is shitting on people with PTSD. Like, Jake, I'm glad that you came out of Iraq. And he describes, killing a guy in Iraq. And I'm just like, I'm glad you came out of it okay. I'm glad that you survived it. And I'm glad that you don't have any, like, major mental trauma. And I'm glad you went through this without any major mental trauma. But you know what? You don't get to fucking tell anybody else how they should or shouldn't feel about something. And to have this, like, final paragraph, that's not the final paragraph, but just to have that in the last chapter about, like, making fun of people for, like, well, I'm these kids, they're these snowflakes. They just can't deal with, fucking spending 5 hours getting berated and watching their friends bleed out and hearing bombs go off and then having the SWAT team kick the door in and gun people down. God, fucking snowflakes these days, man. So fuck Jake and fuck this book. Don't read it. Don't give it any money. Don't order it to your library. Look, if anybody's like, I wonder what this book is, wouldn't it be funny if we read it? Direct them to my Twitter, the Twitter thread. Direct them to this podcast and tell them, please don't do that to yourself, because holy shit, is this gonna just fucking destroy your brain? It's slightly destroyed mine. I like the brain bleach I'm gonna use is fucking Cormac McCarthy after this. Like, that's how bad this book is I need prose that is depressing but at least, like, well written or something. Like, I can't, guys. And don't go out and buy any of the other books. Like, I thought about it, like, wouldn't it be funny if I read this one and then I went back to the others, to the Stand Your Ground series, and read them? I'm not going to do that. I'm never going to do that. I'm never reading any more of these books. If this wasn't a library book, I would literally destroy it. Like, I'm against book burning in general, but I feel like I would need to burn. Like, I don't want this book to not exist because I don't want to be an oppressive lib. But I would destroy this book if I could, just because I need, like, it's like sage smudging, you just got to purge it. Like, it's so bad. It's so bad. It's so fucking terrible. Everything about it is terrible. Don't ever do this to yourselves. I am going to take this book back to the library, and then I'm going to find it in the stacks later and steal it and then set it on fire or something. I'm not actually going to do that. I would never steal from my local library and set anything on fire. But I will, like, push it to the back and hide it or something, because I don't want any of my local racist Facebook uncles to fucking come across a new William Johnstone novel. Oh, this is going to be great. And then go through it and just be like, yeah. These are the things that are absolutely happening at Forest Park Community College. A bunch of fucking blue hairs sitting around talking about microaggressions and their privilege. Yeah. And leftist bomb stuff. Jesus Christ. All right. So let's see. We're going to go into another review in just a second. I know this one kind of went a little bit long, but there's a lot of things for me to yell about at it. So stick around in just a couple of seconds and we'll get into our other review. And we're back. Okay, so this is going to be our first episode of a Generation Kill review. Each month we're going to be doing, I'm going to be doing a review of each episode. After it's this one, they're all going to be $1 on the Patreon. But we want to give you the first one for free. Also wanted to kind of flesh out this episode a little bit more, even though I talked about trigger warning a lot longer than I thought I would. So Generation Kill aired in 2008. It is about the First Marine Recon Division, specifically a group of a team of Marines. The First Marine Recon, but we stay with a Sergeant Colbert, who is the team leader. We have Corporal Pearson, who is his RTO, which basically means his driver. We have Private Trombley, who is one of the backseat window lickers, and we have our intrepid Rolling Stone reporter who wrote the book that this is based off of. So there's the book is very good. I will eventually reread that, probably after we've done all of the episodes for this, but I remember the book being very good and true to life. So what I want to do for this is mostly because I would like you to go out and watch this show as well. It's on HBO Go and HBO Now and whatnot. It's probably on Amazon or something. You can probably get it somewhere else. But there's just various things, like, because while I was watching it, I just kind of took notes about things that kind of stood out to me. Not only for what is and isn't military, and what is or isn't a true to life military experience, but things just kind of stand out as a little odd, or as now watching it as a I guess woke leftist vet that I am, horrifying. There's a lot of so I guess let's start it out. It starts out with them talking, doing live fire exercises. Episode 1, get some doing live fire exercises out in the desert, having fun, shooting shit, having a good old time. And then we go back into they're in Kuwait, they're wherever their base of operations is. And then we just get a lot of like dialogue. We get the normal, like, a bunch of Marines in a tent, what are they doing? Turns out racism is one big thing, which honestly is what you're going to run into in the Marines. The show tries to make it sound like it's racism, but also we're best buds and we're just doing racism because it's funny. And like, yes, but also no. Like, you get the feeling a lot of times, like in the real military, when combat troops are doing that, like sometimes you kind of get a feeling like that they do believe these things. Like, each race is like, in this like little group here, like in the Marines, right? In this unit or wherever you're at. And this isn't just in the show, I mean, just in general in the military. Like, somebody's like, I don't like blacks, I don't like Mexicans, I don't like white people, I don't like Puerto Ricans or whatever. But here, the white, the black, the Puerto Rican, the Hispanic, the whoever, the Asian guy, they've all like proved themselves, right? So we're cool with each other here, but also like back out in the real world, I think I still think these insanely racist thoughts of you, which is about normal for most of the people that you meet in the Marines. Sergeant Colbert is very, very, I don't want to say progressive, but he's obviously he's obviously a natural leader. At one point, a windstorm starts blowing the tents down, and Colbert is the one who gets out, and he comes out of the tent. He just looks around and like scans things going on, and just immediately starts grabbing Marines and saying, "You go here, grab that, hammer that. You with the sledgehammer, come here." Like, he immediately takes charge of the thing, and really shows that he is the real leader there. We've also got our the lieutenant, Lieutenant Fick, Nathaniel Fick. He's great. He's the only lieutenant that I've ever seen who is competent. Who at one point, Pearson accidentally like burns his face with a hot plate that blows up, and Lieutenant Fick totally covers. He was just like, "Yep, he was using it outside of the tent within normal parameters. It suffered a catastrophic failure. He's good to go, and everybody's fine." There's so there is a really good like dynamic between them, but you can also see that there's also a lot of like people who don't belong in the Marines. There's Captain America, who is phenomenal. He's just like constantly yelling and screaming, "We're all gonna fucking die out here. They're just sending us up here to get killed. Oh, we're gonna run over here without tanks. How are we gonna do this? You've got Godfather, who is the major in charge of these guys, and then a bunch of like really like kind of fucking dick suck ass captains, like the one who's just like he taped all of his windows so he could look at his laptop while driving, so he could be more tactical. And of course, that means you can't see shit, and they missed a turn somewhere. Um, it's Lieutenant Fick is great, and then like everybody above Lieutenant Fick is a complete dipshit. Other than like Godfather seems to be kind of on the up and up, but beyond that, every other officer is completely useless. Also, much like the real military. Anyway, so as this goes through, there's a lot of different things that while they're in while they're waiting to go, like there's a lot of sitting around waiting to Humvee maintenance. We're just sitting around doing nothing, doing PT. At one point, there starts the rumor that J-Lo is dead, which is very. I mean, it's not funny, but when I was in basic training, Aaliyah died. If you don't know who Aaliyah is, please get off my lawn. But Aaliyah died August 25th in 2001, and we had a drill sergeant come in very distraught about it. I feel sorry for the guy too, because he was a big fan of Aaliyah. But but I mean, we knew, like, he came in, he told us, that was the worst thing to happen in America during my time in basic training, until the other thing that happened on September 11th. But for a brief time there, Aaliyah was the big news. So and the J-Lo rumor is a thing that goes on throughout the entire show, from what I remember. Like, there's always just like a background of like, but did they say anything about J-Lo being dead? They don't want to say anything because it'll fuck with our morale, so that's why they're not telling us about J-Lo. Let's see. So they get letters from school kids, and they do their normal Marine, fuck peace. We want to go kill shit. They've got let's see, one thing I will notice. So they do get they get ready to step off, right? So they get there's a whole scene, like at one point a bunch of pizzas get delivered, and like when something like that happens, like the fucking Kuwait City Pizza Hut comes and drops off a bunch of pizzas and sells it to the troops. Like, okay, we're about to go over the line. They're giving us our final meal before we're living off of MREs and fucking buffalo water for a month and a half. So there's that, starting to move in that direction. But at one point, Colbert is what's his name? His RTO is banging on the door, and he's like, "Come on, man, we gotta go. You gotta get out here." And Colbert's just like, "Can I have just one last piece of fucking civilization to take a dump?" And he comes out, and he's got a porno in his hand. But when he opens the door, there's graffiti on the inside of this porta-john. And I just have to say, I don't know who they got to be like the military liaison to tell them that, but like, I mean, it wasn't perfect. Like, I don't think that they were going to get away with drawing like gigantic dicks inside of there. Like, they didn't make it cartoonish, but they definitely did. You open it up and you could see that shit had been written on the inside of those porta-johns. Maybe that was there on purpose. Maybe that was there just because they, rent porta-johns, and that's just what happens inside of a porta-john. It is literally impossible for a member of the military to sit inside of a porta-john with a Sharpie marker in hand and not draw or write something. It is not a possibility. It can't ever be done. So whoever did that, kudos to you. Let's see. So they start getting ready to go. They get the reporter from Rolling Stone. Of course, they're just like, fuck this guy. But then he's like, oh, I used to write for Hustler. He wrote like, Beaver Hunt and whatever. I was never a Hustler aficionado, so I don't know what any of those things are. I think Beaver Hunt was like, just writing. So of course I wrote porn, so I'm, the Marines love him. It's played, the character is played by Lee Tergesen, who is one of my favorite HBO actors. He was in Oz. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He was in The Wire for a bit as a teacher. So I'm a big fan of his, but he plays the part very well. He plays, bravery and fear all at the same time very well. He has a fantastic because it's described in the book. He has a fantastic scene where they have a gas attack. So they're all throwing on their shit, they're throwing on their pro masks and everything, and he, the reporter throws his on, and everybody kind of they take it off, and he's struggling. Like everybody gets their shit on. He's like out in the middle of the compound, like just falling on his ass trying to get his mop suit on, and not getting it on, and like there's something like it got jammed up in his groin, and so he's his like losing blood to his balls and shit. And they finally they end the gas thing. They've no gas, and they go out and they free him up. And first thing he says is like, I forgot to spit out my dip, so I had to swallow it, which happens in the book. And like how he talks about having to concentrate really hard to not throw up on the inside of his pro mask, which yeah, you don't want to fucking do that, man. So there's a really great cast of characters. Like I said, mostly you're with Colbert and Pearson and the reporter. And there's one. I will also say, if you've been in the military for as long as if you're newer in the military, I'm curious to know if this is still a thing, because you don't run into it anymore. So in MREs, there used to be there's always like a dessert of some kind, but the MREs used to, some of them had charms, which was just like a little, like a lifesaver candy, right? Like, so flavored sucker candies. And it was always, you get charms, you immediately throw them out the window, you throw them out of wherever, get rid of them because they're charms. You don't run into charms anymore. They're not really in MREs anymore, just like the little tiny bottles of Tabasco sauce, which I miss just because those were just so cool. So I'm curious if that's still a thing. So this is, this is 2003, and this is, obviously there's still MREs with charms in them. I think they finally just got rid of them in whatever batch probably came, during the big war step off, because I don't know, maybe the people that packaged these knew, or maybe finally the soldiers that they have actual soldiers taste test the MREs, and maybe they had enough times of soldiers open them up and being like, okay, the potatoes, the meat, charms, the fuck out of here with these, just like charms getting tossed like fucking 50 feet away or something. Like, maybe we should stop putting those in. So it's interesting they put the charms in there, and like charms come back in the show as well as I remember. But yeah, if you're in the military and you're maybe only like 10 years or less, I'd be interested to know if like that's a thing, because like I said, there are no more charms, so there's nobody to tell you to throw them out the window. And that would be a really good military history, like to go back and find out where exactly that comes from. Like, who got blown up holding a package of charms that now all of a sudden none of us can eat charms, because fuck you, charms are good. Like, there wasn't those old MREs were not didn't have a whole lot of greatness to them. Not like the modern ones. Like you kids with your fucking combos and your Skittles and whatnot. Back in the day, we had charms and we had to throw them in the river. So yeah, tell me, let me know about charms. Your history with charms. Let's see what else. A few other things. Sergeant Major Sixta. You always have a sergeant major who is bored and has nothing better to do than to come and fucking yell at soldiers, or Marines in this case. I more than once got hemmed up by a sergeant major, and there in the military there's two sergeant majors. I don't know about the Marines, but in the Army there's two. There's sergeant major, there's command sergeant major. So if you've heard of people talk about command officers versus staff officers. So an officer can be somebody who is in command, like your commander, your executive officer, somebody who is in charge of a unit and in charge of the troops in it. Then you have your staff officers. Staff officers aren't generally in command of people, but they have officer-y jobs. They have things that officers do. And throughout your career, you're supposed to jump back and forth as you go up the ranks. You do some time in staff, some time in command. Some people love command, some people love staff. So it's the same thing. You've got command sergeant major and you've got sergeant major. So one's a command, obviously, and then one's a staff. So staff sergeant majors, we have a staff sergeant major in my unit. I don't know what he does. But he's cool. He's a cool dude. Like, he's not a dick. But and a lot of times you go out on deployments and you will run into massive asshole sergeant majors. Sixta is that to a T. Just constantly telling people to shave and cut their hair and everything. Phenomenal. I love them. And again, these are things that are true happening. Now, the show does sound like it was kind of written by Kevin Smith, as my wife pointed out. There's a lot of dialogue in it that is not dialogue. One, not dialogue in the book, and two, just it's like nobody talks this way to each other, especially not Marines. Marines do not talk to each other in these glowing, flowery terms. This just doesn't fucking happen. So, but it's still great dialogue. It's still very well done dialogue. After we watched this episode, my wife and I watched an episode of Deadwood, and another place that has flowery language, but like in Deadwood it kind of works because, as she pointed out, she's like, this is kind of Shakespearean. What you're watching is supposed to be down and dirty, and the Marines going to war. So that was an interesting thing that I didn't realize until like she said it, and it's like, yeah, Colbert is smart, and Pearson talks a mile a minute, and we because he's taking rip fuel all the time, which is not uncommon, but like the way everybody talks to each other is very unrealistic in a lot of ways. I don't know, maybe Marine Recon is different. Probably not though. And so they go off to war. They make the crossover into Iraq. They're singing in the Humvee, which we did all the time. We still do. I had a mission that I went out on where the guys said it was bad. Like every time they left the wire, they had to listen to Katy Perry's "I Kissed a Girl." They're like, we did it once and we had a great mission, so we do it all the time now. And it's just, that's how tradition in the military is born. We do a thing and then everything went right, so we're just going to assume that every time we do this thing, everything will go right. So a lot of singing Skater Boy, which is going to be stuck in my head for the next couple of days easily. Let's see. So some other things that kind of pointed out the lingo and the acronyms. There is some of the way that they talk when they're doing military speak is very very on point. It seems like they are having things that are written by people that are in the military. Also, I thought it was really cool. They have like up in the window on the passenger side of the Humvee, they have the frequencies and who is what and what frequency everybody's on. And at one point in time, Colbert and Pearson are just sitting around like talking about the radio, like setting up the radio, setting up the well, now you can do single channel encrypted, blah blah blah. Like somebody sat down and gave them a SINGAR class. At least they like, here's what you're talking about. Here's what it like when we sit you in front of this, you know what you're talking about. So a lot of set dressing is very very well done. And that's one of the things that I really liked about it, is that it feels like it is a show that somebody gave a fuck about, and pulled somebody in, and somebody was just like, yeah, because in our Humvees it was you had a paper up on there because the frequencies changed, so you didn't just write them on there. It makes sense that they would write them on just like in dry erase or whatever. But we would also have like a 9-line medevac. Here's the 9-line. Here's what it is, because I couldn't tell you what a 9-line is right now. It's ambulance. There's like, are they ambulatory, or are they laying down, or is this the there's 9 different things that you're supposed to, of information that you're supposed to put up in the heat of battle, or things getting shot at. Like, fuck, I need to call a medevac. Here's the 9-line. Here's I can give you the information. Done. Too easy. So a lot of set dressing, very well done. And then of course, as we're going through, there's a couple of different things. There's a lot of themes that end up getting repeated through here. At one point, they come across 2 pickup trucks full of Iraqis that are pointing guns at them, and then they wave them off. And then, of course, later on, they're like, oh yeah, we found out that the Death Squad dudes are riding around in these white pickup trucks with red diamonds on it, which is exactly what they found. And like, oh, we literally should have wasted these dudes, but okay, whatever. Like the rules of engagement in this like bounce back and forth, and like it really feels like as it goes along that nobody knows what the fuck's going on, which is also very 100% my time in Iraq and Afghanistan. It seemed like people knew what the fuck was going on, but in the end, really nobody knew what the fuck was going on. And especially when when there's a lot of like just new information, and they're just trying to figure out what the fuck's happening. There's a lot of people saying, I don't know what's happening, but I have to give an order. And I mean, that is the right order. You don't know you don't know who these people are. Wave them off, man. I'm not going to tell you to gun these people down if I don't know who they are. And then, of course, later you find out that they're bad guys, and you're supposed to be like, fucking officers didn't know what they're doing. But guess what? That was the right call. Don't just fucking kill people, please. Let's see. And then also there's a point where they come across a bunch of Republican Guard Iraqis that are coming through, who are surrendering, and they have to unsurrender them because they can't take care of them, which is in direct the first direct violation of Geneva Convention Code, in which these people surrendered to us. They are Republican Guard. They are the enemy. We need to take care of them. We have to do that. And it's nope, send them back. Which again is also another huge part of these things that happen. Geneva Convention kind of becomes suggestions rather than outright law, because nobody's going to prosecute you for that. And yeah, we can't take care of them. We can't do anything for them. We can give them some water and tell them to continue on, and that's about the best that we can do. So, episode 1 in a nutshell. Like I said, this is kind of jumbled, just because this is where we're meeting a lot of the people. But I do want to just put forth that I feel like you should definitely watch this, whether you're in the military or not, because this is very, very much, if you want to know how things happen on the ground with the NCOs and the actual war fighters, this is the best place that you're going to find it. And whether you agree or not, this is not historical, obviously, but this is, very close to historical. And, the book is, what the Evan Wright, who wrote the book, this is his experiences. These are the things that he saw and he wrote about, and things that he took pictures of, and the things that he encountered there. So it's not it's not technically a historical document, but it is history. And there's not a lot of this out there. A lot of the stuff that you're going to read and see in all the TV shows are going to be very flowery bullshit, and how this person won the Medal of Honor by keeping 60 Al-Qaeda at bay, and this, that, and the other thing. But that's not what war is. This is what war is. The Generation Kill shows you what war is. The only other book that I can think of is Joe Kasabian's Hooligans of Kandahar, which I've talked about on endless times. These things, and this is what I want out of these things. I don't want the flowery heroes, medals, and bullshit. I want to know what it's like for the dudes on the ground. I want to know, Jarhead. That's what that dude's experience was. It's just this absolute shit garbage, and it fucked him up for life. That's it. And that's my story at this point. So definitely stick with us. This review is almost at 25 minutes, and I don't want to go too long with this episode, but I also there's a lot more to talk about. I got a lot more notes that we're going to go over once we watch the next episode. We'll talk about Rudy. We'll talk more about Evan Wright's character, maybe Lieutenant Fick. Maybe I should, I don't know how I should be doing this, but episode by episode, man, this I think this is going to be really great. So please subscribe to the Patreon. Also, if you haven't subscribed to it, the bonus episode this month is a conversation between myself and Trevor. I'm never going to pronounce it right, but Helgaban. We'll put it down in the show notes, and Brock Wilbur. We talk about the video game series Fallout. We do a Is It Fascist episode about video games, basically, about the Fallout universe itself. And really, it's just kind of a conversation about Fallout, what we like about it, the gameplay mechanics, the various characters, the different factions, who's good, who's bad, what is good or bad in these things. We talk about Fallout, mostly, 3, Vegas, 4, and a little bit of Fallout 76. Brock was the only one who's ever played it, and he did not have kind words to say about it. So I don't know, but that's available for you on the Patreon. All the other reviews for this are going to be available on the Patreon in the coming months. We do, the Patreon, because it's a way for us to support ourselves doing this and to get you more content. I want to do nothing more than fucking beam content into your brains as much as I can. Sign up for the newsletter. Follow me at Army Strong. Follow Nate at In These Deserts. Follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. You can find the sign up for the newsletter there. That's once a month. Comes out with promo codes for our store. Buy our shirts. Buy everything. Fucking Venmo me. I don't know, man. Just whatever, however you feel like you want to support. But also, we are just happy that you come and listen to the free episodes as well, and let us babble for fucking an hour plus about just the insane things that we are, consuming, I guess. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope that it wasn't too boring just listening to me talk. But fucking Nate usually does most of the talking on the other episode, so it's my turn. It's my turn this time. Anyway, talk to you guys next week. Thanks so much.